Cave Creek, Arizona, Monday, April 15th, 2024. Meeting's now called to order. May we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Algerton. Councilmember Bunch.
Here.
Councilmember Alcama.
Here.
Councilmember McGuire.
Present.
Councilmember Rhodes.
Here.
Mayor Morris.
Present.
And Vice Mayor Royer is out.
Scott Dane, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public announcements. I don't have any, or does council have any public announcements they'd like to bring forth? Seeing none, and seeing a full room, I'm going to read an opening statement that we read from time to time. First of all, welcome to the Cave Creek Town Council meeting. I'm Mayor Bob Morris. Before we begin our meeting, I'd like to clarify how it's conducted and specifically the public comment portion of the meeting. Public comment is welcome. This is one of many ways to inform your local government representatives and staff of issues that are important to you, or to suggest improvements in the way we conduct the town's business. Our goal is to have a welcoming and friendly atmosphere between our community members and local government. Speakers are reminded in advance to address their comments to the mayor and council and not to the audience. Arizona open meeting law governs these activities and greatly restricts how meetings are conducted and how council members communicate outside of the meeting. There are two opportunities for the public to speak. First, at call to the public, immediately following these remarks, you will have an opportunity to speak to council staff and all those participating and watching via Zoom. There can be no discussion by council of items raised, but we can direct staff to investigate. Arizona law requires that all discussed items be on a published and advertised agenda, so all parties have notice of potential action. Speakers must come to the podium and speak directly to the council. Speaking to the staff or to other audience members is not permitted. Please speak clearly into the microphone. To begin, state your name and address for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak on the relevant subject. You will note a set of 3 lights on the podium. Green means you are within your 3 minutes. It turns yellow as your time is about to expire, and red when your time is expired. At that point, please expeditiously conclude your thoughts. The second way to publicly communicate with us is during the public comment or public hearing section on a specific agenda item. Speaking is conducted the same way as called to the public at the microphone and limited to 3 minutes. If you wish to speak during either of these opportunities, please take a form on the table near the door, over here. Fill out your information. Please hand it to our town clerk, Teresa Riza, sitting to the left of the council members. She will call your name when it's time for you to participate. Thank you for attending our council meetings and taking the time to participate and express yourselves. This is democracy in action. With that, we will have called the public.
David Phelps.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. David Phelps, Cave Creek resident. So for the last 5 years, I've been speaking to the councils regarding preservation funding within the town's budget during the budget cycle reviews and approvals. First few years, we've got very little response. Third year, we got wind that things had changed in the formulation for funding preservation in the budget, got the information to that, wherein the budget was changed in 2017 to take money that was earmarked for preservation funding from the half-cent spur cross sales tax, and it was diverted to the Cave Creek Water Improvement Capital Fund. Last year, we finally got to a momentous time wherein a number of council members, after I had asked that the recension of the 2017 diversion be discussed, possibly rescinded, so that we could continue funding preservation. And then in conversations this year so far, it seems that we've taken a step backwards where we're not going to have that conversation. And I think that we will find out tonight that the cause to do that is ever more present and the need is now. So we don't really need months and months of delay. We should have this conversation as soon as possible. And in fact, Mayor and Council, we need to know as voters where you stand on the Arizona State Land Plan for purchase prior to the early ballots being dropped. We need to know this for clarity. So if you're not absolute, if you're not for open space preservation purchase, let us know. Just tell us, I'm not for it, or I'm shaky on it. I can't make up my mind on it. Any of those answers is acceptable as long as that's your answer. Because us trying to second guess where you're coming from during this pivotal time is not a benefit to you, and it's not a benefit to us. That's my comments for tonight. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you.
Scott Dane,
Scott Dane, 5924 East Mountain Reserve Drive. Mayor, council members. I just wanted to come up here tonight. I'm usually not up here, but I'm up here to support my friend Bruce, and I thought I'd bring this up and put it on public record. 15 years ago, my neighborhood, 16 homes, did a deed of gift and turned over some roads to the town of Cave Creek. Prior to that, we spent $50,000 of our own money to bring these roads up to the required standards of Cave Creek. Since that time, Cave Creek has done literally nothing to those roads. You can get on Google Maps, and it looks like a jigsaw puzzle up there. We currently have a budget in this town that we're looking at that exceeds that of some small countries. I would like to get our roads repaired, sealed up, and brought back to the standards that we were asked to put them to 15 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you.
Janet Moore,
Janet Moore, 7439 East Ridgecrest. This preservation has always been very dear to me. It's something that I have wanted to see get done for many years. I brought up times when the bond was low that we should buy it then because that was 3%, and now inflation has caused the prices to go up, which is no surprise because land is going to go up. So now it's going to cost more. And I think that the town needs to really pay back that money that we swept out of the preservation fund. I believe it's between $3 and $4 million that we could use for preservation. And I think we have to pay it back with interest. I think that's the only fair thing to do. And isn't it ironic that the money that was set aside for preservation actually helped our development? So it's time to pay it back. That money saved us. It's time to pay it back so that we can have that preservation and not have the property get sold off. And I know everyone thinks they're saved by the zoning, but I don't trust that. I trust that any governor that comes in there can change that zoning if they want to. Thank you.
Thank you.
no additional speakers.
What was your name? What was your first name? I'm sorry, Mr. Hazelton? I think there's another.
For a call to the public. I have, what was your name?
Kathy Jones.
You're on for Dark Skies, which is that first item. This is for call to the public.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And good evening. Mark Hazelton, 39617 North Schoolhouse Road. It's been my privilege to live in Cave Creek for 44 years. Before this council came to be, before the town was incorporated, I was on something called the Cave Creek Improvement Association. Since then, I've also been involved with almost every conservation effort within the town. I appreciate the fact that you're all volunteers, just as many of us are volunteers. So I'm hoping we can find some common ground. David has mentioned some of the items that I would, as well as Janet. I'll try to keep within your 3-minute time limit. Where we may disagree is on priorities and funding. I hope that you will support Mr. Arlen and Dark Skies, because that's another issue that will change immediately and in the long term if we have thousands of new homes built, which will be the result if 5,500 acres of state land is not preserved. We'll lose our quality of life, our dark skies. We have tremendous pressure coming at us. Look at the Taiwan semi plant 10 miles away. We have a rare opportunity, however, to choose our future. This year's budget seems to show the same diversion that David mentioned. I've heard from the mayor that he didn't think there was anything worth saving that was available. I will point out that last week, Dick Van Dyke's original ranch with 80 acres on the creek just sold, $2.8 million. 220 other acres just closed at 72nd and Continental Mountain Road. I'm sure you'll be hearing some disputes over that coming zoning. If the state lands aren't preserved, thousands of new homes will be built. We will need exponentially more infrastructure. So I don't think it's an either or. I understand you put money into perhaps very much needed improvements. I'm not an expert, I can't say. I can tell you when those additional homes are built, you will need exponentially more infrastructure. Growth for its own sake is the philosophy of cancer. I know of 4 parcels in private hands right now that contain 1,000-year-old petroglyphs. I think of this as a failure of myself. If you're not aware of some of these opportunities, let's get together, form a committee. 3 concrete, I hope, constructive ways to move forward. Actions you could take tomorrow. Establish a citizens advisory board on state lands with dedicated staff resources, as was done for the water issue. 2, work to reinstate Growing Smarter. If you don't know, that was a program with state money matching grants. It would make your life a lot easier when it comes time to try to purchase state lands with 50 cent dollars. And there is a movement now among some towns and organizations to reinstate that.
Mr. Hazelton, your 3 minutes are up. Would you
Okay,
conclude, please?
last point. Finally, and most urgently, let's do the right thing, restore funding to conservation. Anybody agrees? Thank you.
I want to address one thing. That's a mischaracterization of my remarks. We've had one opportunity come up to buy land, and we took that opportunity, 30 acres at Spur Cross. I have not said anything else about any other land out there because we have not had those opportunities. Next.
I do not have any other speakers for call to public. I do have speakers for others.
Okay.
Oh. It's over here. If you'd like to, Carol Perry likes to speak.
Carol, why don't you speak at your 3 minutes and then fill your card out afterwards.
And I have a couple of people who said if I go 30 seconds over, I have their time. First,
We don't operate that way. But that's
Carol Perry,
Nice try.
4944 East Sawmill Circle in the town of limits of Cave Creek. And the first thing I need to do is from the heart, thank all of you for the grant that you just gave to the Sonoran Art League in order to print the map for the Hidden in the Hills studio tour in November. We are so grateful. I speak for everyone, all 600 members on the board. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so Mark and a few other people know all the numbers and the facts and the statistics. So I'm just here to sort of pull on your heartstrings a little. The reason we're asking and asking and asking again is that we're determined to preserve as much of this breathtaking, heart-stopping Sonoran Desert, sensitive land, and riparian habitat as is humanly possible, and most critical of all, in record time. You see, while we've been expecting to save the 5,500 acres of state trust land within the town for the last 14, 16 years, others have been working much harder. At an acre an hour, over 140,000 acres have gone under the blade to development in that same period in Maricopa County. And the reason we want Cave Creek to acquire this land is it's so that we can preserve and protect it in perpetuity, forever. The thing about the desert we love is that it is so sensitive that whatever we do with it now, it quite probably is how it's going to be forever from now. In the desert, if you rip it out, tear it out, knock it down, it won't grow back next week or next year or maybe even ever. You know the saying, you're not in Kansas anymore? This Sonoran Desert is extremely fragile. We all know that. Since for many of us, it is hard to imagine what we can't see, I'm going to paint a quick picture. Yes, most of us are fortunate enough to drive through some open space nearly every day, and therefore most of us have experienced the jolt of discovery when some long-known open space is suddenly bladed flat, followed quickly by graded lots, walls, and development and rooftops. Now take a look at the hills around us everywhere we are this evening, and imagine driving here one day and finding every piece of wild, untouched, natural desert with its myriad wildflowers, plants, rabbits, javelina, coyotes, and bobcats, covered with some form of man-made structure or surface. You can be certain what is not acquired for preservation will be acquired for development. That's the natural, time-proven consequence. And is there ever one person here tonight that doesn't know just how fast we are growing? Phoenix is projecting to be double in size by 2050. Double the size of Phoenix in 2050, and they're knocking on our door. And how imminently at risk is our desert at this moment? We have to take steps to protect it now, because very soon the economics will make this land so valuable for development, only unlimited funds will be able to save it. We have a small, very finite window in time to permanently acquire and preserve our piece of this glorious, rare Sonoran Desert. And while we can be proud of our accomplishments of the past 25 years, if we continue at this pace, we will have saved less than 1% of what remains available. So when we ask you to help us in our efforts to acquire and preserve another piece of our Sonoran Desert, ask yourself, is there anything Cave Creek could possibly buy that will hold the same or greater pleasure for all in our community, our future generations, every single year for the rest of their lives?
Hey, Carol, your time is up. Would you conclude, please?
I'm concluding. We all need to invest whatever we can to ensure the future of this desert we love so much. Many of us have given our time, from trail building to grant writing, our attention, letters and calls to legislatures since the very beginning of the push to save Spur Cross, and even our money. Most of us here wrote those $400 checks 15 years ago, believing that our contribution that day was going to make a difference forever. You, your children, and all of theirs will come to reap the forever benefits of a Sonoran Desert saved. Last sentence. If you ever feel we are asking again too much, be glad that we are focused on the mission full time. Be glad we ask too often rather than too seldom, because all too soon will come the last sound you want to hear, our silence. When we stop asking, it's because it's too late.
Thank you. That the last one? Okay. Next on the agenda is the town manager report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just a few items to report to the council. Wanted to let you know that last weekend on Saturday, we had our drive-through brush yard disposal event. We had about 100 participants this time. You'll recall the previous month, we had about 38. So it was good to see a significant improvement in the number. Again, this is where our residents are able to clear their yards, try to have fire breaks, and try to improve the properties for fire safety. So I would consider that a success. Also, I just wanted to remind the public who are here and the council that we have an open house that will be held on April 23rd from 5 to 7 in the council chamber right here for the proposed Morningstar Trail. So we're hoping to have a number of people show up, and the way that this will work is we'll make some prepared remarks, and then we'll have some stations around the room where we'll be able to staff those up and be able to have people go to the stations that are of interest to them as far as the the specific answers that they want. We'll also have as part of that answers to frequently asked questions that we'll share with people. So they'll have handouts that they could take with them. So we're looking forward to that. The other thing I just wanted to share with the council and probably for the council and the public is that you probably notice a little bit of a different change to the format, to the council agenda tonight. In the past, we used to have sometimes department reports that sometimes would just kind of be part of my report. And then you'd see somebody coming up and talking about something unrelated to what the manager was reporting. So we just kind of formalize this. Other cities I've worked in, this is how they do that. And it's actually a little bit better the way we have it this way because it's agendized and you can really get into thorough discussion for those items. Now, again, the target audience for that is really the council, and it's for staff to be able to do that. And it's probably the closest thing that you would see other than having a work session on a particular topic. But I just wanted to let you know that that's what we've done starting tonight. And you're not going to see the number of department reports that you see tonight. It's pretty unusual to have that number on. We'll likely try to keep it to no more than one, maybe two. But because of this, we've made these changes for tonight. Mayor and council, that's all I have for a report tonight.
Thank you. First on the agenda is the consent agenda. First is the approval of the January 4th, 2024 special council meeting minutes. Second is approval of the February 20th, 2024 regular council meeting minutes. Third is the council discussion possible action to accept a 33-foot wide deed of gift for the 54th Street right-of-way through the McDonald's property located at 34680 North 54th Street, Cave Creek, Arizona, 85331. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Next on the agenda is the council discussion possible direction to the town manager relating to the town's lighting ordinances that may result in Cave Creek becoming a dark sky community, presented by the town manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and council, before you is a request as the mayor read for consideration of the town of Cave Creek to become a dark sky community. You'll recall 2 meetings ago on March 25th, resident by the name of Bruce Arlen came up. He is the head of Cave Creek Dark Sky, and this is a nonprofit organization that advocates for dark skies in our community, and also they're involved in doing a lot of public education in our town. And so he had presented to the council a request for consideration of the council approving some changes to our lighting ordinances. So the council pretty much gave me the direction to come back at a future council meeting, and which that's what I am doing tonight. Due to the amount of staff time and effort that would be involved in this endeavor, I wanted to make sure the council provided some direction on this before we'd move forward. With that, I'd like to kind of describe the process that I've identified. And then, of course, tonight it is your prerogative to make adjustments or not go along with it. You have obviously the options before you that you may make, because it is for council consideration. So basically, the first is, if you agree with this concept tonight, the way that this process would work is that staff would review the proposed submitted revisions that we've received from the Cave Creek Dark Sky, and we would look at our, compare it to our current town lighting ordinances. And the staff would do a review, and they would also meet with the Dark Sky International and try to verify where there might be some either discrepancies or not quite understanding some things that they would like us to change. Then staff would then present the revised lighting ordinances to the Planning and Zoning Commission for its review and possible recommended approval to the town council. Following that, the town council would review the proposed changes to the lighting ordinances and consider taking action on the revised lighting ordinances. Finally, the last step that I've identified would be that staff implements revised lighting ordinances and works collaboratively with the Cave Creek Dark Sky organization in submitting an application to the Dark Sky International so that the town could receive the designation as a dark sky community. That last piece, just to make sure you understand, it's not that we would be really collaborating, but there are a couple pieces that, in my own experience, how that has worked in another community. And that is the local dark sky organization in Fountain Hills, where I was when we became a dark sky community. They were involved in the what I would call the outreach and public education, and they did a lot of activities that the town chose not to be involved in. So that would be some aspect, and that's why that application would be jointly worked on to make sure that the pieces that the town would not be involved in would be handled by the dark sky. It's not relegating or delegating our authority or our responsibility for this. It's really becoming a dark sky designated community is really between the community or the town and the Dark Skies International organization. But there is a component that we probably would work with the local dark sky organization to ensure that the application would have some of the pieces that relate to their organization. And that we would be involved more on the regulatory side and our ordinances and the enforcement. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council may have regarding either the process or becoming a dark sky community. Thank you.
Questions from council? Tom?
Questions, Mayor. What year was that grading out in Fountain Hills?
It was about a 12 to 18-month process, and the designation was received in, I want to say, January of 2018.
Just to comment, I appreciate the approach and the outline that you've given us. It's important to notice that we have asked to have some of our ordinance reviewed. This fits perfectly with that part of our strategic planning, so.
Thank you.
I agree with Councilmember Elkman. I'd like to see maybe for the next few months, we get more ordinances reviewed, since we haven't reviewed a lot of them since we've been a town.
Thank you. I've noted that.
Tom?
Councilmember Algerton said what I was originally going to say. It's a process. And I think we need to take a better look at this process. We looked at it a couple of years ago, and there were some real problems with communication. And I hope we can overcome those. And I'd like to see us be a dark sky community, but it needs to be done very carefully.
Ernie, are you?
I got nothing to say.
The one thing I think is missing here, we had, this came before council before and was turned down. I voted for it, for the becoming a dark sky, being on that path. And at the time, the biggest complaint was the regulatory approach by dark sky. And I don't know what's in this. I mean, that's still the level of knowledge, and I suspect council may be the same way. So what would you think of having between when the staff reviews it and the staff presents it to the planning commission? I really think that the council ought to understand what it's all about, because right now I do not.
I think that's a good idea, and I would be happy to direct staff to, once they've done their research and they've looked at the ordinances and they have the recommendations and what they would want to go forward with, that we, rather than going right to planning and zoning, we come back to the council for you to check in with us. And then we can then, assuming council's okay, then we would go with the process as I outlined. So I'm okay, and I think that's a good suggestion.
Okay. Any more questions from council? Let's see. We have a public comment on this, so
Bruce Arlen.
Thank you. Bruce Arlen, Morningstar Road. This is fascinating. It's been a long 5 years, little over 5 years. 5 years ago, I brought before with Ernie Bunch, who was mayor at the time, an agenda item, and it was called, let us look at a non-binding, that's the key word in quotes, non-binding resolution to investigate if we wanted to become a dark sky town 5 years ago plus. Here we are 5 years ago. It's not that, it's not that complicated. It's so simple. The information has always been out there, and now it's really out there. Here I am. We turned in to Grady Miller, and thank you very much, Grady, for championing bringing this to the agenda schedule, and the mayor and everybody else here for consideration of a proposed rewrite of our current ordinances. The lighting ordinances, the documents that we turned into Grady Miller show the entire work product. We've taken the current town lighting ordinances, all right there, right in black and white. And with a work product in red, blue, and green, you see every step of the way what we took the original current right now ordinance. And what did we do? We showed you everything for you to look at. You can read it yourself. We work with Dark Sky International, who is the absolute pinnacle of the world's dark sky lighting guidelines, and the 30 communities around the world who are already certified, 6 here in Arizona, which obviously we want to join. Arizona is the top of the United States dark sky area. I'm running out of time, darn it. Let me just say very quickly, I've gone too long, as usual. So vote yes for the discussion, which is all this is, to go ahead and do that research. There are 3 letters that you have. One is from the director of the Lowell Observatory. You have it in your hands, I believe, endorsing this vote tonight in our 5-year effort to join the dark sky world. That's Jeffrey Hall, the director. You have a letter from the president of Fountain Hills Dark Sky Foundation. They just did a groundbreaking ceremony on April 8th for a $25 million observatory right in Fountain Hills. Big money coming in, big visitation, big benefits to the town businesses. And lastly, Dark Sky International, the world standard, as I said before, lighting guidelines, education. They endorsed us, Cave Creek Dark Sky, in this town with their letter tonight. They explain the process. They talk about what happened in these last 5 years. So vote yes, and let's join the dark sky world, and everybody benefits. The town, the real estate, the businesses, and actually our lifestyle. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kathy Jones.
Hi, Kathy Jones, the address 6042 East Hidden Valley Drive, Cave Creek, Arizona, 85331. Council members, Mr. Mayor, Town Manager, it's nice to see you all tonight. And yes, I am very much concerned about the dark skies. Several years ago, across the street from me, a dwelling went in. I don't really think it's a house. It's more like a greenhouse. And when this project was all done, one night I saw this glow out on my windows. We need regulations. The town approved 25 outside twinkling lights on this dwelling. It was awful. This kept going for several weeks until the mayor at that time, Mr. Bunch, Mayor Bunch, came over and saw the mess. You could see the glow from Cave Creek Road, and I'm 2 blocks off of it. Okay, now what I'm getting at, around where I live, which is the Tamarask Grove that was just plowed up. There's supposed to be maybe, I think, 8 houses going on those 3 small lots. I want to make sure the council can take a good look at the lighting that's going to go in there. If it's going to be anything like what was across the street from me, it's pretty scary. And for the animals' sake, for our beautiful skies, we need to have some ordinances on protecting the glow of the lights on other people's property. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff Hill.
Hi, Mayor and Council. My name's Jeff Hill. I live at 6638 East Azure Hills up North Valley. And I haven't been here as long as Mark or some of you guys, but I have been here for 30 years when my wife and I escaped the big city south of here. I can't imagine living in any other place. I get asked all the time, where would I move? And I can't think of any place else that I would rather live, probably all the same reason that all of us are in this room. Listening to the people talk here tonight, I could really tell there's quite a effort to preserve what we have and try to protect it. And guys like me are dependent on you guys and the council and our city staff to protect our interests, to try to keep Cave Creek like it was as much as we can. I'd like to preserve what we have here forever and for my grandchildren. I'm supporting Bruce and the Dark Sky Initiative. I think it's important for us to start with that and keep the lights out of the skies. And we just really depend on you guys to look at the voices that come up to this podium and discuss these things with you guys, with the staff. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jody Powers.
Jody Powers, 41902 North Old Stage Road. I also am in support of Bruce and the program. From where I am on Old Stage Road, and you look south, you can see the whole you can see the valley and the lights that are there. But you can look up and you can see the stars. I have a friend that lived in Carefree. She sold her house to a man who is he studies the stars. I can't think of what he's called. So our sky here is very rich with stars, and we need to keep it so that anyone can look up and see them. So I appreciate Bruce and all the work that he and his group have done, and I appreciate the time that you'll put into looking at what's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott Dane.
Scott Dane, 5924 East Mountain Reserve Drive, Cave Creek. First of all, timing is everything. Last week, Bruce asked me to come up here and support the effort. And I do support Dark Skies. I have as long as I've lived up here in Cave Creek. Now, the official Dark Skies I support. We had some friends came over for dinner on Saturday night. He and I went to high school together. He moved from Baltimore out here a few years ago. They live in Tatum Ranch. Yeah, we all know where Tatum Ranch is, just down the road. I used to live there myself. As they were ready to leave about 9 o'clock at night, they went out in our driveway, and we also sit slightly up and we can see all the way out across Cave Creek. And he went to get in the car, and his wife walked behind the car with Natalie and looked up at the stars. And 4 or 5 minutes later, her husband's still saying, get in the car, we need to go, because from Tatum Ranch, she can't see those stars. All she sees is the lights of Phoenix. Perfect. Now I knew what I was going to say up here tonight. We need to keep that. We need to keep the dark skies. We built our current home back in 2007, 2008. We moved in, I sat up there and I looked over towards Adam 54th Street was that house, right? Sitting up there with spotlights coming all the way across the valley that we could see. And it was, the owners of it were in town, out of town, didn't live there. It took months and months and months before Adam finally contacted them to get something done with those lights. Okay. We see all kinds of lights from our house. Over the years, it's gotten better. Okay. Again, I'm fully in favor of dark skies, but if we move to dark skies, our current ordinances are good if they're followed and if they're enforced. We work on this complaint-driven system. When dark skies is put in place, I don't know what the regulations are for enforcement, but in addition to the zoning regulations that we'll go ahead and change, we also need to deal with the enforcement to make sure that dark skies isn't just a piece of paper that sits in an archive somewhere in Cave Creek, that it's a real and living thing that's enforced and we're truly dark skies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Julie Goldhammer.
Julie Goldhammer, 34022 North 52nd Street. I am going to try to make this as brief as possible. I am totally for dark skies. I think the whole idea of conservation and preservation of the state land trust is the apex where this all starts. If we have all of that preserved land, which I'm also in favor of, it just goes without saying that we have this beautiful valley where we can all look up and see the sky, the night sky. This town has been growing off of volunteers and people who feel passionate about a bunch of different projects. I will go back to there's state land people that have worked really hard on conservation. There's several of them sitting in this room right now tonight. We have people who are sitting in this room tonight that do the rodeo really well, and that's based on volunteer work. We have people that do the museum efforts, all of the mining, the gold mining experience. And we have, of course, our Cave Creek Dark Skies representation here right now. That's what makes up this town. That's what we can do to be better and different and special. As one of the other speakers just mentioned, timing is everything. This is a unique selling proposition. If we do this right and we do this with all of the communication that is necessary to build and bring everybody on board, there is absolutely no reason why we shouldn't do this. It's easy when you have folks who have already done the volunteer work to put these ordinances together. It's helping support the staff. We do not want to overburden the staff with extra busy work, but I think this is kind of a no-brainer. There are so many benefits, and I'm not going to sit here because Dark Skies, I'm sure, put in their letter what some of those benefits are, but we could have some additional community events that would bring in and drive in tons of tourism and visitors, enable growth in the community. It would enable more nighttime foot traffic, which would help our local establishments and bars. And we could come up with a creative and kind of a compromising way to either support, create some sort of a rebate or some sort of an incentive to businesses and homeowners to be more compliant with the dark skies. So I am 100% in favor of this. Please vote yes for it.
Thank you.
Abraham, I apologize. I don't mean to butcher your last name. Bye-bye.
Abraham Abay, 42620 North Cahaba Ranch Road. When we started out this meeting tonight, everybody stood up for one reason, and it was in unity. Everybody had their hands on their chest, one nation under God. This is the unity that we have under God. The scripture is so powerful. It says, the heavens declared the glory of God. So everyone that has come up to speak tonight, what have they said? They said these stars are just amazing. But why? Because it declares the glory of God. So nations, mankind from the beginning has squandered this beautiful planet that God gave us for stewardship. So here we are at a time that we can actually step out and say, Lord, we will do thy bidding. Because what did he say? He says, I lay before you blessings and cursing, life and death. Choose blessing, choose life. So when we look upon these words that are everlasting words, and he wants us to look up unto heaven to see what he has created as a beauty that it may be left for generations and generations. So what does that mean about dark skies? Why is it important to become part of this organization?
because we will all pass away, but the heavens will remain. And the organizations that will help to endure these things will always be help to a town, to a city, to a people, so that they can preserve these things that are set before us to preserve. So I encourage you, please vote yes, preserve the skies, preserve Cave Creek, because this is our blessing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Miriam Farrell.
Good evening, Miriam Farrell, 41404 North Old Stage Road. So many of these folks have been so eloquent tonight in their appeal. And I'm going to be very brief and just say that I love living in Cave Creek because I love and appreciate the privilege of being able to look up from my backyard at any night and see the dark skies. So I believe that the Dark Skies Initiative is something that would go hand in hand with all of the preservation efforts that most of our townspeople would like to undertake. It's something that we can leave as a legacy for the future generations to come. So I encourage you to vote yes and take this to the next step. And eventually, I would love to see Cave Creek become a dark sky community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tracy Davies. Tracy Davies.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to speak this evening. My name is Tracy Davies, and I live at 41777 North Old Stage Road. And my husband and I have been out here for 25 years, and we moved here because of the dark skies. And so we are very much in favor of continuing that. We love it out here. I love to go to my neighbors with a flashlight and swim in the pool, come home and look at the fabulous moon. And so we are very much in favor of the dark sky movement. I think it is the right thing to do and certainly goes hand in hand with preserving what we have in our community and tourism as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Roger Fowlick. Okay. Lisa Greenman.
Good evening, council, and thank you, town manager, for bringing this up. And I want to say, I think this is such a win-win. I mean, we elect our council as our representatives, and then we have our council tell our staff how we should move forward. And here we have a situation where you knew that the ordinances needed to be looked at. They're good, but they're not enforced all the time, and they're not quite up to snuff. And here you had citizens who were all volunteer. They went through all of the ordinances, and they also worked with Dark Sky International, which is they're the ones that know how to make a dark sky town. And they've got it all highlighted. You can go through it, you can read it, you can see what was taken in, what was put out, what was, I mean, it's really wonderful. Now we have the synergy of our town staff, and we also have those that worked on it through Dark Sky and in Cave Creek and Dark Sky International. I have to say that for us to become a dark sky town is so important at this point in time. Everybody stood up here tonight talking about preservation and how important it was and how it was our legacy that we were going to leave behind in Cave Creek. We have an opportunity here to almost be like a necklace that goes from Fountain Hills across Rio Verde and into Cave Creek. And there's a town past us that's also a dark sky town. We have the opportunity to start to say, no, the glow we can turn it down. If you go to Flagstaff, you go to Sedona, dark sky towns, you can see how getting rid of the glare of light actually makes businesses easier to see. It actually makes it safer in the town at night. So all I can say is I hope that you will vote yes tonight so that we can start to move forward. 5 years ago, it was not a no to Dark Sky International. It was a no to a non-binding resolution to explore this opportunity. So let's take that time now to vote and say, yes, let's go ahead and let's look at how Dark Sky can be part of the preservation and conservation effort that we as people living in Cave Creek, all of us, we're all here. We can go on forever about an open space, a dark sky, the sky, and just, knowing that how many times have you driven home? You're coming up the hill from Phoenix or from Scottsdale, and suddenly you're sort of like, oh, I'm here. I'm in Cave Creek. It's great. Let's make it that way. Let's keep it that way. And let's use this opportunity. Really, really, really use it. I just want to say that it's really, somebody previously said about timing. This is the time. This is the time to say yes. And you won't, if you have fears about it, everybody's here to answer your questions. So thank you.
Thank you.
Lauren Van Winkle, notice she's in favor. She'd like to speak. Oh.
I don't really want to say anything. But I am in favor. I am Lauren. Not good at talking.
David Phelps.
David Phelps, Cave Creek, thank you again for the opportunity to speak. As part of I was part of the rewrite of the ordinance. Cave Creek Dark Sky is ready to discuss the new lighting standards to be implemented over the next 10 years in Cave Creek. Unfortunately, over the 5 years that it took to get us to this point tonight, you've seen a proliferation of cheap string lights, holiday lights, as they're probably called when the enforcement gets to their business, and spotlights that are just illegally pointed at the flag, so they get an exemption forever. Our methodology for enforcement is education. And we are offering in the ordinance to go to somebody's house when it's dark, when they're complaining, take a light measurement and confirm or deny that you have a violation potential here. Then it would get turned over to the town for enforcement. We will act as a witness for somebody who is experiencing an issue and help them get through. Because you can lay on your couch and see a light coming through your living room window and wonder, is that legal? Can that be legal? And today's code, because of interpretation and because of just a little bit of looseness, it may be legal, but it's blinding. So over 10 years, what we would like to do is educate and through example, get people to come along with us so that we can change our lighting levels so that you can see the stars as long as you want to be here. Because I definitely think it's something that attracts people to come here. And the longer we wait to get going, the higher hill we'll have to climb to get it back to where it should be. I would like the council to know that if you could encourage P&Z to hear this before they take a summer break, if they were scheduled to take a summer break, that would be helpful. Because the sooner we can get that slotted, the longer duration the public notice can be out there. And we think it's to our advantage to have a long public notice time. We have this available on our website. You guys have an electronic copy that anybody should be able to call you and get. We have nothing to hide. We think that the transparency is our strength. So thank you.
Thank you.
I have no additional speakers.
Okay. So at this point, we're at the point now of motion. And so
I'll make it.
Okay.
Motion to direct the town manager to have staff review the town's lighting ordinances that may result in Cave Creek becoming a dark sky community.
Second.
Okay, there's no financial, so we'll have a voice vote on this.
Is there discussion?
Oops, excuse me. You have the motion.
Yeah, so truth in advertising, I've worked with Bruce on this a little bit and given him some advice periodically along the way. The biggest change that I see in anything to do with this ordinance is going to be with string lights. Right now, you can go down to Costco, Walmart, Home Depot, or Lowe's, and you can get the big black string of string lights that have a little bulb down the end of them, probably about this big. For you to become dark sky compliant, you're paying about $15 a string, as I recall, seeing it in Costco today. I'm sorry, you're paying about $30 a string. For an additional $23, you can buy opaque shades from Amazon that snap right on, and you are now dark sky compliant. I think that is going to be the biggest change and the biggest impact cost-wise for anybody around here. I mean, the other thing is, it doesn't preclude you from putting street lights out. Walmart has I don't know if anybody's been there at night, they have great street lights. They light up their parking lot like it's no tomorrow. Those lights are about 12 feet tall. They're perfectly shaded and everything is pointed down. There's no reason we can't do similar kinds of things in the town core, which would reduce the need for string lights. So, I mean, there's a lot of creative things that we can do as a town. We need to take a look at it and explore it. With that, I'm done.
Okay, you have the second, Tom?
Yeah. I'd like to note that Bruce and the volunteers have done some programs at Spur Cross. I've gone up there. I have not been a volunteer. There are hundreds of people that are coming to Cave Creek to honor the dark skies that we have now. And I think that's helped to define the community. And I'm hoping that staff, council, the dark skies people can come together to find the best way to preserve what we've got. But I do want to note the contribution that's already been made. And there are other projects that a couple of you worked on that I really appreciate. I have had discussions with staff. I'm not totally satisfied with what came out, but I think we can bring this forward and do a better job.
You sure?
No.
Your choice.
Let's have a little history lesson here. When the town of Cave Creek was formed, a couple of ladies went down to Tucson by the University of Arizona and discussed lighting with some people with a fledgling organization that ended up becoming Dark Skies. So our initial light ordinances in the town of Creek, the reason we have what we have now is because those people did the homework in the very beginning. And I got this story from Martha Arnold, so I know it's true. That is why we have the dark skies that we have now. When several years ago, my recollection is we went through after this started and we addressed the lighting ordinance. And as I recall, we changed the Kelvin numbers way down lower. If there is folks out there who with these string lights like Dusty was mentioning, but they can make them and get that Kelvin down, then that'd be a great thing. I am all for going forward with this. My issue is actually having some organization looking over our shoulder. I believe in smaller government. I believe in less oversight. And I have a problem down the road. I don't have a problem fixing our ordinances. I have a problem with having somebody looking over our shoulder in the future.
My comments have been about preservation, and this piece about dark skies fits right in with why I ran for this office. So I'm all about it.
Thank you. Tom?
Mr. Mayor, I don't know if anybody has noticed the project that was done at the library, I guess about 6 or 8 months ago. And I didn't notice it for the reason you would think. I drove down the street one night and it was dark. And I called Bruce Arlen at home. I said, are you guys doing something with the library? And he goes, well, they're cooperating and they're maybe going to take the string lights down, but they have a fabrication now around the street lights in the parking lot. And our monkey wrencher, to use the term, is David Phelps on that, who apparently went home with one of his leftover Cub Scout sets and actually fabricated just a simple piece of metal, and he and Bruce went up there and got the library board of directors cooperation. And for the next couple of nights when I was going down Schoolhouse Road, I kept noticing how dark it was because it had not been like that up to prior. So I called him, and as I'm prone to effusive, too long remarks, as you know, you bear with it. I called him, but I wasn't excited about the restoration of dark sky in that one little spot. I was excited about something that I saw as a quality of life restoration. Yeah, the whole spectrum of benefits with doing more with the skies. But I thought, my gosh, if we can do something like this with dark skies, maybe there's some other issues in the community that are part of growth and progress that we could look at maybe a different way, such as Tree City USA, please bring them back. And there's other things I just think we can do. So I've always been a supporter of this since the very beginning when I bumped into Bruce coming out of the red truck 5 years ago and wondered who he was and heard about the issue. But I'm more excited about the receptivity of the council and the staff on this project, so we can maybe move with more dispatch in the next few years on other issues where there's consensus in the community. And I don't want to presuppose by giving examples, but everybody would have maybe their own list. But I'm jazzed on the volunteerism and the gathering more than the specific issue itself. And take the test at the library, drive down Schoolhouse one night, and there's something different. You won't know what it is, but it's noticeable for folks who have been here since before the library. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I guess my comments are, I scored this the first time around, 5 years ago, voted in favor of it, and I expect to do so this time. So we're going to have a tough time because all three major roads coming this way out of Phoenix have either improvement widening projects or they're studying improving widening projects. So it's going to be a tough fight to keep the skies in Cave Creek as dark as they are now with that glow from the south. But I plan to vote in favor of this. Yes.
I just want to make sure that there's clarification on this. So the motion that was made by Councilmember Rhodes and seconded was the original motion, which was to have staff review the submitted ordinance changes and then take it through the planning and zoning process, then come back to council. Earlier in the discussion on this item, I heard the mayor suggest that we come back first. So I just want to make sure if we either need to amend the motion, or I fully understand that that's what the mayor was suggesting. So
Well, but bring it back to us. Just bring it back to us. Give us an educational section on what it is. I'll leave you to the timing of that.
we will do that then.
Okay.
If I need to amend the motion, I'm happy to do that.
You don't
Mike?
need to.
Okay,
You got direction.
I got direction. That's
Yeah,
good enough then.
Your plan is not in the motion, so I think it can be
Super.
stretched over that. Yeah. So this is not financial. So we'll have a voice vote. All those in favor of moving this forward signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we had a no, so let's take a roll call, please, Teresa. I thought you, oh, you did. Excuse me. Excuse me. Teresa, cancel that.
Did anybody else hear me say no?
And I'm the closest to him. Well, Dusty's a little closer. So the motion carries 6-0. You're on your way. Next on the agenda are department reports continued from April Fool's Day. Utilities Department update on the January 17th, 2024 8-inch force main collapse at Cave Creek Road and Carefree Highway.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Let me get myself situated with this new arrangement here. Okay. Sorry I had to continue this from the last meeting, but I just want to give council an update on the force main, which collapsed that we had. It was almost 3 years ago, or 3 months ago that it actually occurred. So it was a call I did not like to receive, but our staff dealt with it very, very professionally and in a great manner. So it was the force main, the 8-inch force main that we have that actually ties into our gravity sewer system at the intersection of Carefree Highway and Cape Creek Road that collapsed. The last 40 feet of the line basically deteriorated. And what we're left with, which it was originally an 8-inch ductile iron pipe, and as you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, there wasn't much pipe left. So we were able to get in there, do an emergency repair, and get that fixed, and bring the force main back into operation. During that time, we actually had to. This is actually this force main collects and transmits about 90% of the flow for the town. It comes from the Rancho Miana lift station. So during that time, we actually had to set up a bypass operation. We actually had to vault and truck our wastewater flows around the break location. So we used B&F Construction to do the immediate repairs. And one of the reasons we wanted to do this update tonight was B&F actually has a cooperative purchase agreement with the town. We were piggybacking on another contract to have with another municipality. In August of 2023, council approved that cooperative purchasing agreement, and council gave us the ability to do up to $650,000 of sewer repair work over 2 years. We didn't anticipate spending all this in this time, but that's the contracting mechanism that we used to get this done. So we didn't actually have to come back to council for emergency authority. We used the existing contractual authority that we have. The total cost of repair that was spent was $264,000. So we're within the capacity that we had, but to make that payment occur, we actually had to move a few things around in the capital program. So we pushed out another project, the repair on Andover Hills Wash, which we'll do next fiscal year, so that'll be refunded. And we had to move around a few other things. So we're not asking to go into reserve contingency. We're doing it within the current capital budget and getting the work and completing the work and paying for it this year. After the break, obviously, we're very concerned about the overall condition of the line itself. It's 2.8 miles of an 8-inch force main. It was constructed in 2010. It's cement mortar lined ductile iron. So ductile iron itself is a very strong material, but then the cement mortar lining that's more of a water pipe. So that was what was chosen at the time when this went in. And what happens is the cement mortar actually doesn't give you much protection against the sewer gases. So where you have high spots in the line where sewer gases collect, or what actually the failure we saw was at the end of the line, that the line is always open to the atmosphere. You're always getting sewer gases. The cement mortar eats away very quickly, and then you're into the ductile iron pipe, and the ductile iron pipe corrodes very quickly. So it's less than 14 years since installation, and we lost the end of that pipe. Not to say it's a good thing, but talking with other municipalities and seeing this in other locations, this is a common failure. The air release valve, there's 8 or 7 high spots, what we call high spots along the line, because it doesn't follow a constant profile. There's air relief valves. Those are actually pockets where air can collect. So that became our next concern, is do we have air pockets and deterioration occurring at all those locations? So we actually engaged with Black & Veatch to help us do an assessment. It was sort of a paper assessment and some field work assessment to give us the next direction. Where do we need to go next with this force main, such a piece of critical infrastructure for the town's wastewater system? So the recommendations are that, well, physically, we tried to enter into the force main. We actually had while the bypass was going on, we went into 4 of the locations where we have air relief valves. We removed the air release valves, and we actually tried to get a camera into the pipe to see if we can assess the condition of the pipe. At 3 of the locations, the pipe was still full of water. It was still holding water, so we couldn't see the pipe. The one location we could see the pipe, we didn't see significant deterioration. We did see high water line and some other deterioration, but there was no real conclusive results. Since I've been with the town now, we've actually had 2 opportunities to cut into this force main. One at the Rancho Miana lift station, it looked completely intact, and one another location where we actually had a broken plug valve that we had to remove, and we actually did a video camera inspection about 200 feet. We didn't see any deterioration. That's not to say there's no deterioration, because we've only seen a small snapshot of 2.5 miles of pipeline. But from the physical inspection that Black & Veatch could complete, we couldn't get any conclusive results. Their recommendation is we do what's called a smart ball. And it's just that it's a 3-inch diameter ball that we'd actually put in the force main at Rancho Miana and actually use the pumps to push it up. And it has sensors in it, and it'll actually look for the wall thicknesses of the pipe and give us some other information about it. So that might help us locate where there's air pockets, which allow us to go and do more further investigation and potentially highlight if there's some loss of pipe. The estimate for that is about $45,000 to do that. So that's something, again, we'd put in the force main, it would follow its way through. We'd catch it at the back end of it, then we'd gather all the data we can out of it. So it's something that's used as a in situ place pipeline inspection assessment. So that's what the recommendation that we move forward with. Either that, or we're actually having to make entries into this pipeline and do bypasses to get into it. The air relief valves themselves, there are 7 locations. In 2020, we actually replaced them all. Black & Veatch's recommendation is that we were actually on about a year program. We actually got extended out because of staffing resources. They're recommending every 6 months we go in to make sure that they are maintained properly. They also recommended that we do some H2S sewer gas monitoring at the force main discharge manhole. Right now, it's very difficult, the access to that manhole, because of its location, because of the traffic control setup. So we're going to look into see if there's some technologies that allow us to do some monitoring there, real-time monitoring, and or something that we can get into, and it might be require us to do after-hour staffing to get into those, in and out of those locations. The other thing they recommended was that we refine the trans-emergency operations plan. We learned a lot, and our staff really responded well, and so did our consultants and contractors to help us through this situation. And we want to actually get that institutional knowledge and memorialize it in our emergency action plan. So in the future, we don't have to rethink about this. What size of pumps did we use, the holding tanks and the setups, et cetera. And even the routes of the trucks. That was actually, because we actually had to go around, we actually created a traffic blockage. So we actually had to route our trucks through local streets to get around the blockage. Another thing that we want to wrap up is, and with this fiscal year, is actually the repairs of the manholes. So we actually did, with the repair work, we were able to get into the first 2 manholes in the intersection and get some repairs done, but there's additional work that's needed. You're seeing the picture there is actually the discharge where the force main ties in. So the light gray at the bottom is the new repair we did, and you can see the sort of the stripe up the wall that we had severe damage of the concrete. We were able to get that coated. There's indications there's been probably at least three different repairs done at this manhole over its lifetime, because there's 3 different types of coating in there. The recommendation is to go in and actually remove that, but it requires physically doing an entry into it and chipping it all off and then recoating it. So we like to get that done this year, and we'd like to do this manhole in the next 3 down, which would get us to 53rd Avenue, and then we could get out of there. So it's going to be disruptive to traffic, but we want to do it once and be done with it and get out. So we're planning to do that before the end of June with this current fiscal year. And then with the assessment, we'd like to do that next fiscal year and get that work done, the $45,000 assessment work with the smart ball. And with that, I can answer any questions about the breaks or our proposal or recommendations for moving forward with this.
Yeah. What are we doing differently? Well, how are we going to, this is something that should have been prevented. And not due to you. I'm going to, because that's part of my history lesson here, because in my probably the 2nd or 3rd year on the Water Advisory Committee, the Water Advisory discovered that the town had turned the town code inside out. It had no monitoring program, had no oil and grease program. There were no inspections. And that's one of the things that we got fixed very early on with heavy opposition from some parts of town leadership. The thing is, oil and grease in these lines create acid gases, hydrogen sulfide, which are extraordinarily damaging to both concrete and steel. And that's why we're repairing all the concrete parts in the system. They were eaten up in no time. In addition, we had H2S and smells down at the sewer plant all the time, the neighbors down there. When we finally got an inspection and a monitoring program in every quarter, I think we have one of yours scheduled pretty soon. There's a couple of graphs in there, and there are also inspection reports that has been around. Did you start those, Sean, or was it before you were here?
Mayor and Council, no, I did not start that. We call it the pre-treatment program, and that started before me. I can't take credit for that. We've been working, and my staff have actually done a really great job of bringing that up to the next level and making sure that we have enforcement. And we actually now have an online system that they input the data. So it used to be managed by a spreadsheet. Now we have a database that we can monitor the performance, make sure that people are the pre-treatment program, as Mayor indicated, keeps the anything detrimental to the collection system and or the plant out of the system. So anybody who has a grease interceptor, a grease trap, or a sand oil interceptor is part of that program. They have to show that they're monitoring it, and then we go out and do quality control test on that. We used to spend a lot of staff time on doing it, but really they provide us the information, what they call the manifest, and it's been a more effective program. But part of that is identifying all the devices that we have and making sure everybody was following the rules. So, and staff have done a lot of time to make sure that that was being implemented.
So that program is really cheap compared to going in and fixing all the manholes and spending $264,000 and all the odor complaints and who knows what else damage is out there. I highly urge you to find out what else we're dealing with. So I think the prevention is always cheaper than reaction. What we have here is a reaction to mistakes were made a decade and a half ago. And I'm convinced there's more damage in there. So I support this whole program of monitoring and checking the lines. It was really good for us when we had the opportunity to check the cap line. We cut out those coupons and sent them off for testing and found that the cap line was in really good shape because there were some questions on that. So well done on your reports. I look at them every time they come out. So
thank you.
Yeah. Was that a question? I'm not sure. Other questions? Okay.
No, we will, before we obviously do the work in the manholes, because that requires a pretty invasive traffic control setup, we will give advance notice. We won't be doing it the night of like we had to do during the break. So we'll give a few weeks notice when we're going to do that. Right now, we're looking at, we think about a week's worth of work in the manholes. We're going to talk to the contractor about trying to do that work at night. But we'll have to factor in safety and other things. But physically, we actually have to get a person into the manholes and chip off the old coatings and do repair work and recoat them. So it's slow going, but it's necessary to make sure we avoid a collapse at that intersection of a manhole. At this point, we can save those manholes if we do this work now.
Thank you, Sean. Next on the list is the elections 2024. Our deputy town manager and town clerk.
Mayor and council, you may be aware, we have a election coming up on July 30th. This year, our election will be for a mayor, 6 council members, and then voters will have an opportunity to consider changing the current 2-year terms for mayor to 4-year terms with term limits, as well as changing the current 2-year terms for council to 4-year staggered terms with term limits. In addition, the home rule option, the alternate expenditure limitation item will be up for voting as well. Some of the important dates, they are on our website, but for pro-con statements or arguments for the home rule option, as well as for the consideration of the term changes, are due by May 1st. And then the last day to register to vote is July 1st. So all this information, if anything else changes, is on our website, as well as Maricopa County Elections website, and will be updated accordingly if anything changes. So any questions for me?
Thank you, Teresa. Next on the agenda is a staff report on Bike Week 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm Marshall Stein. Bless you. We had Bike Week this year. We survived. The town's still here. We're grateful for that. Good. There were no arrests. There were no major injuries, no major scuffles. It was a wildly popular event. I would say we had probably near record crowds. So it was busy. I appreciate the support that the town and the council gave me on the flashing beacons. My thought and goal to synchronize the crosswalks failed. Take responsibility for that. The lack of line of sight and the sheer volume of pedestrians and vehicular traffic made it virtually impossible to operate the arms that would come down remotely. That being said, the barriers were left in the upright position. We did utilize the traffic monitoring cameras that were on them, so that was a plus. And we did utilize the flashing yellow beacon. And oddly enough, we got very positive feedback on the flashing yellow beacon. Who would have thought that a beacon was so popular? But it said it did bring awareness to the crosswalk. So I was appreciative of that. So again, the synchronization of the crosswalks is to arms come down and let people cross simultaneously at each crosswalk was a failure. And I apologize for that. I tried my hardest. It was new technology. We tried it and it didn't work the way we wanted it to work. The device worked. It just, I guess I had a bad idea, but technically it was kind of good because the flashing lights and the cameras. Anyway, there were extensive delays going through town on most days. Traffic, like I said, was an all-time very, very, very popular event. Just to give some numbers, some brief numbers, I don't have a ton. Friday, the 29th, we saw approximately 11,000 vehicles coming into town. Of those approximately 11,000, you're looking at approximately 5,500 plus heading eastbound and approximately 5,100 plus heading in the westbound direction. Saturday, the 30th, we saw approximately 6,800 vehicles. Sunday, another 3,400 vehicles. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, there were no traffic control plans, so no restrictions. Thursday, restrictions went into effect again. Friday, super busy. Friday, the 5th of April, saw approximately 6,200 plus cars. Saturday, the 6th, again, super busy, approximately 5,600 vehicles. Sunday, approximately another 5,600 vehicles. The event's popular. It's loud. It generates a lot of traffic, vehicular and pedestrian. We did the best we could to manage it. I think the sheriffs did a fantastic job with having a rapid response force in case, God forbid, we had any problems. Manpower wise, I feel like we had more than enough manpower on site, A, to manage the traffic, and B, to respond to any emergencies. Daisy Mountain set up their command post, an excellent job. We worked very well with them. A couple of medical emergencies. Anytime you have a large crowd like that, you're going to have, trips and falls. You're going to have heat related. I think we had two heat related, Chief. Yeah. Which isn't something we commonly see at Bike Week, but it happens. I had the privilege, I suppose, of attending the Waste Management Open as a marshal. And I saw a lot of people drinking in public. I saw a lot of people urinating in public. I saw a lot of disorderly conduct. And I'm going to tell you, as your marshal, as you, my counsel, we didn't have that in Cave Creek during Bike Week, right? The hooligans, no offense, for Bike Week, we didn't have that. We didn't have fighting. We didn't have urinating in public. We didn't have disorderly conduct. We didn't have all these things that, you would normally think would happen at a crowd this big. And I'm proud of that. I think that, that a lot of that has to do with the management of the event, from the Hideaway and from the participating partners in the Roadhouse, no offense. And a lot has to do with the tone that we as a town set, that we're not going to have those shenanigans in our town. And I'm proud of that. I think, like I said, the event grows. And I think someone once said, if you build it, they will come. They're coming. And it's managed in a safe and efficient way, but it does generate traffic, pedestrian traffic, vehicular traffic. And we manage as best we can. Again, the synchronized crosswalks seem like a really good idea. You guys were all supportive as well, and it just didn't work out. Sometimes I come up with really good ideas, sometimes not the best ideas, but that one is not the best. But I tried it, and again, I take responsibility that that did not work out as it did in my mind. It seemed like such a good idea in my mind. It happens. You have to answer almost any questions you guys have. Well, it's got to be limits to everything. It's been a rough couple of months.
Questions or comments? So, yeah, comments, Stuart, welcome.
We've had Bike Week for many years.
Too many.
They're going to show up, whether or not we get involved as a town, they're going to show up. So it falls on shoulders of you and others. And I certainly have seen over the years as Bike Week has expanded in terms of participation. Generally, you have been making a really good effort and a successful effort of doing better and better management every year,
Thank
except with the glitch this year. And I think we all truly appreciate that. It really, and the businesses, some people don't understand the amount that the businesses have put into this. This is not all paid for by the town. The businesses really are the primary supporters financially. And they bring in good sales tax, where I think all of us really appreciate what they've done. It's financially, it's a great benefit to the town. And, you know, I thank the businesses, I thank you, Adam, and anyone else who's been involved. It's become quite an event. And if we don't have it, they're going to come anyway.
I agree. Thank you, Councilman. I try hard.
So I'll agree with everything that Tom said for a change. And I just want to say that under your direction, the placement of the law enforcement vehicles, the timing of when they were out and how that all happened, I think it really contributed to a successful event for us in a safe and sane way. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that greatly.
The strategic placement of the paddy wagons on both ends of town was really a brilliant move. Whoever thought of that, whether it was you or the sheriff. The reason being, people see that because they're all lit up as you come in, and you get the message that no bad behavior is going to be tolerated, and that's a good thing.
You're probably the
And
first one to notice that in many, many years.
I do agree that this is an event sponsored by Scottsdale, and it's a beautiful ride coming up to Cave Creek, and there's no way it's going to ever get canceled. Even if we chose not to participate, they're still coming.
Agreed.
So I appreciate the bars working with us. And I do appreciate the fact that we all kind of work together this year.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, as an Irish American, I would like to take exception to the term paddy wagon just used by Councilmember Rhodes.
I stand
They- I think
corrected.
Mr.
Paddy wagon.
They are police wagons, I think is the terminology he was looking for. And if you disagree, I'll meet you up at the pub on the hill and we'll talk about
it. Ernie?
Just thanks to everybody involved that made it a successful event. You guys too. I know you were worn out when it was over, and heaven forbid it, your eyes get sore having to count all the money.
I guess that leaves me. I think it was a successful event, and the most important thing always is safety. That's number one on the list. And it was an exceptionally safe event this year. But the traffic can be done better, and I am determined to see that happens. I spent a lot of time observing traffic, taking data, counting, stopwatch, etc. And I've got a number of ideas, but I'm going to throw it out to our staff and to the bars. We got to move traffic through there. We got to cut down on the transit time on the busiest times, and we can do it. I am convinced we can do it. And I'll be working with whoever I need to work with to get that done. So next year, I'm going to be looking for both a planning effort that gets traffic moving through town, the effort on the ground by the deputies to get things through town and to have standards that achieve that. And I think I've got the data to support that. So that is the only fly in the ointment. I think that if this event is going to get more popular, we were already at 15-minute transit times. My transit times are 15 minutes through town. That's too long. So let's work together and see if we can get this thing, the traffic situation, while keeping the excellent record on safety and that we have, and the economic benefit to the bars and restaurants and to the town too.
Safety first.
Mayor, if I may, we're hearing you, and we will definitely work with our traffic engineer that actually works with the barricade company, so that we can see what we can do to improve the traffic flow. So we hear you.
Maybe this is something we could take a look at, a public-private partnership with the restaurants and bars and find someplace to have a parking lot. If we're gonna get more people and more people and more people attending, those streets fill up after a certain amount of time. They gotta go somewhere. So we need to start taking a look at maybe a public-private partnership where the town partners with the institutions to build some kind of parking structure. Just a thought.
Okay, anything else? Then there is public comment.
Thank you.
Rick Stahl.
I just want to say thank you to everyone. And to answer your question, we actually did rent across the street, the parking lot for the whole time and spent a lot of money on that to park people. What we noticed with all the news channels and stuff, more and more people are just coming to play like looky-loo. They want to drive through. We had so many comments on Facebook of people going, it was the greatest thing in the world to drive through the town and see all those bikes. And it's cars, it's coming through, you know, with the bikes we had parked. And we had all the trailers, everything across in the back over, you know, across the street. We're used at Rebel Ranch. And we actually, like I said, rented that out. So I know the town did great. The sheriffs did great. They worked with me. Adam, we went in, I'd jump in his car, we go down, we'd open up the whole lanes on one whole side, pull the cones off on certain days, and then other days it's, well, we got to put them back up as we went. And we tried to, you know, alleviate the flows and stuff and help the flows through. But what I did notice is a lot more cars coming through. And I know that even Arizona Bike Week was saying that we had over 85,000 people the second weekend.
The town at Cave Creek had it
Coming
or
through up
Scottsdale?
here and Scottsdale.
Okay.
Yeah, with all the people that were staying down there, going to the concerts and stuff like that, but they said over 85,000 people. And I noticed that Saturday. That Saturday, it was almost going into Carefree with bikes parked. It was crazy. And almost past the stop sign. So it was that crazy on Saturday. So, you know, it's every year it gets busier. First weekend might have hurt us because it was Easter, plus it rained. A lot of people out of town, obviously pushed everyone on that second weekend. That's another thing that, you know, helped. It basically created a lot more traffic on the second weekend and that too. So plus, like I said, Arizona Bike Week doesn't start till Wednesday. So then they have all the people staying down there and they all want to come up here. Everyone loves Cave Creek. And we noticed it in all the comments. If you look at any of the Facebook, it's just all praise about Cave Creek, the town, the stores, everything, the sheriffs, everyone, you know, people from out of town. So I just want to say thank you. And if you have any questions, I can try to answer, I will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Hinkle.
Evening, Paul Winkle, representing from the Buffalo Chip. I just want to say that we had a phenomenal bike week this year. Back to what he was saying, first week was a little slower compared to the second half, and I do believe you were correct that it moved everyone, so we had a much larger influx. But working with the marshal this year and the sheriffs and everybody, it was highly successful. We had almost zero issues. We had the bikers themselves are very respectful. They're like orderly. It's crazy how they'll make a line to the bar, whereas on like our regular Friday night, it's just everybody's kind of everywhere. It's kind of organized chaos. They were genuinely organized. Yeah. So I just wanted to come here and say that it was great, especially with the help of the town and controlling traffic and being in a communication with the marshal all the time with everything that was going on. So we look forward to doing another year and working with you guys and trying to make it better and better, bigger, more organized, more successful, more traffic control, whatever we can do to help with you guys. We're here to communicate.
Appreciate
about
that.
it
Thank you.
And do what it is. It helps us all. So thank you. That's all I've got, unless you guys have any questions for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Daniel Piacadillo.
Mayor and council members, good to see you. It's been a while. I find this fortuitous because it's an election year. So I might say little comments on some of the people running for election and current council staff here and the mayor here. So Bike Week, the beautiful part about Cave Creek, and I've been here for 38 years, part owner, landowner of Harold's for over 30 years. I've seen a lot. Beautiful part about our town, it's symbiotic from the businesses in the town core. And whether it's by accident or God's blessing, we've created a commercial center outside of our town core, preserving our town core. And the residents with preservation of land, which we need to continue to do. It's been great. And a lot of it hasn't come easy, it's come with turmoil. But I am also part of this town of over the years of being here. In 2008, after having a few years of Bike Week, where before 2008, they came to our doors and said, you got to throw your vendors out. They wanted to shut it down because it was a new council, new people. And that was disheartening. Then in 2008, 2009, 2010, when we were running through the building crisis, they came back and said, hey, make Bike Week bigger than ever, whatever other events you can do. So I always want to remember that we have a symbiotic relationship. As being part of Harold's, you guys know, we are on record for being part of a community, as most of these businesses are. We support our community. There's nothing mischievous or deceiving that we're trying to do. We're all trying to make sure that we want the best community for all of us. That being said, I want to thank the town. I want to thank the town marshal, whoever set up and was part of the process of organizing. They should get a sort of reward. We get a good Yelp review, I give that server a gift card. So if I need to give whoever a gift card, I'll give them a gift card because it was well done. I know there was time and traffic, but for the more people in town, it was better than I've seen it in years past. And that's my perspective. I didn't have a stopwatch, but I drove through town every day during it. So I want to thank the Hideaway Roadhouse and their team for what they did. They flipped the great majority of that bill and they listened and they want to be part of it. So as whatever we can do as Harold's, we obviously want to be part of that too. I just want to also talk about the implication for business, 30% busier than we would normally be during that week. And not only for the business itself, but the people that work for us, whether it's a dishwasher, whether it's a busser, whether it's a server. There was over 160 extra hours of good money making for those guys that are part of our community. And when I say that, we all know summer's coming and our businesses drop about 30 to 40%. So whatever we can do to be part of the solution to any concerns you may have, we will. But just remember the things I've told you from the past and how important some of these events are and the symbiotic relationship that should occur with this town. I would love to meet our new town manager at some point and he can get with the businesses. I would love to be part of that dark sky conversation. I know Ernie made a good point. I want our town running our town. I don't want an organization running our town, but of course we want the best for everything. So hope to be part of those discussions too. So thank you.
Thanks, Danny.
Janet Moore.
I have a complaint about the traffic. It's moving too quickly. I can't gape at everything when I drive through. I'm one of the people that drive through on purpose. And I don't have to drive through. And I think most of the residents in town don't have to drive through. If you're off Schoolhouse, you can turn right. If you're off of Galloway, you can turn left. I think I've got that right. You don't have to drive through town if you don't like the traffic. I think that it's just a great event. And not to sound kind of sappy, but it kind of just makes you feel like freedom when you see all those people, those adults out there having fun, and there's alcohol and there's no problems. I mean, it's just amazing to me. It just makes me feel really good. It's kind of patriotic. I know it's silly, but it's true. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no additional speakers.
Okay, thank you very much. Well done with the safety record, I think is just amazing. So next on the agenda is the Arizona State Trust Land presented by another staff report presented by Development Services Director.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. As you recall, last year, council gave direction to staff to proceed with conversations with the state land department and also begin to go out and obtain an opinion of value, AKA an appraisal for the approximately 4,000 acres of state trust land within the town of Cave Creek. About a month ago, staff had a meeting we've been having discussions and meetings with the state land department for the last 6 months or so. Last month, when we met, I obtained a list of, essentially a short list of appraisal specialists from the State Land Department. About 10 or so on that list would meet the qualifications to be able to bid on this. We've since solicited or sent out a solicitation of a request for proposals from those appraisal service providers. And that will, the RFP will close in May. At such time, we'll enter into a contract negotiation to select an appraiser. And based on the scope of work that was provided, chances are, based on the last appraisal that was done for the state land, this would probably be over the threshold that the town manager can authorize for a professional services contract. So it would come back to council. If it's not above that threshold, that would be fantastic, but it might have to. In the meantime, at the direction of the State Land Department, they had discussed the town moving forward with a recreational special land use application permit, by which the town, if approved, following the application process, if approved, the town would be able to take over management of that open space. Those SLUPs, as they're called, are good for an initial 2-year period and then can be renewed on a 5-year basis. The other thing, the last thing regarding the state trust land that they had mentioned is they would also be open to extending the agreements. As you're aware, the town and state entered into annexation agreements and subsequent rezonings of the state land in 2009. Those have a 20-year time period by which the town can petition the state to put the open space up for auction, and the town could, based on appraisal, submit a bid at auction. So, I've kind of thrown a lot. There's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of discussions with the State Land Department moving forward. But right now, it's staff's opinion that we obtain that get someone to submit their request for proposal on an appraisal, turn them loose to begin the appraisal work, understanding that if at some time in the future the town wished to proceed with acquisition, purchase of the open space, we would have to refresh that appraisal likely. But getting someone in tow, just like we were able to do with the 30 acres adjacent to Spurcross Ranch, is really the key first step in all of this. And then also continue to explore the opportunity to apply for the recreational state or special land use permit application. I'm so used to saying SLUP, I forget what the S stands for. So, and with that, Mayor, happy to answer any questions.
I have one. Is there any way that you can talk to the State Land Department or State Land Trust and ask, is there if we get the appraisal, could we get the appraisal to be tied to the Consumer Price Index for 3 years? That way it gives us plenty of time to get things on the ballot. Not this election, but next election, should people choose to buy it. There shouldn't be any reason why they wouldn't want to do that. The land's not going to appreciate that much in value, and it should be tied pretty close to the CPI.
Noted. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor. Just a question. Luke, what's the time, the necessary time for the appraisal? What do you think it will take once the contract is awarded for completion?
Very good question. Councilmember Augerton. The scope of work is very detailed in what we're looking for in an appraisal report. I believe the contract negotiation portion, if we get, say 2 or 3, we've already had 3 reach out to us just looking at the RFP and said they're very interested in doing this. I think that would be part of the contract negotiation phases. Okay, from the date you sign the contract, will it be a 6-week turnaround? Will it be a 3-month turnaround? And really hammer those details out. At this point, it's unknown.
What do you, Mr. Mayor, what do you think is realistic, or what would your hoped for turnaround time be?
For a good report, I go back to, just from previous experience with the 30 acres that culminated, about 18 months ago. That took that was about 6 weeks from the date we signed the contract to the date we had something physical in hand that we could move forward with.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think it'll probably take longer, just simply because you have multiple parcels also. There's a piece here, a piece over here. And I just think it's going to take a little bit longer. And I would think 90 days was probably a reasonable time.
Other questions, comments?
Yeah. Luca, you've worked hard and you've brought to us specifics, and that allows us to target what we're going to do. And I think probably all of us would like to preserve more land, but the more information that we have, the better we can plan for that. And that's going to be very important. And I think the information we get as a result of this will help us to target what we can do.
Thank you, Councilman.
Mayor. Oh, sorry.
So I really believe it's time for an educated conversation with the people of the town. So this piece about getting these properties appraised is basic to that. People in Cave Creek are smart. If we can share with them what we're doing, what it'll cost, how it will affect where we live. Oftentimes we hear that people in this town want to live in a quiet, open space, rural atmosphere. And I know that the changes that have been made are important. The Water Connect, the fire department, the oversize on our water treatment plant, all of those are things that are necessary, but they also encourage the population to come and use those. They know those utilities are here. So as we look to the west and notice the people that are out there, and they're not dumb either, and they're going to say, this is a beautiful place to come and live, and we need a plan. We need to be ready to go. We need to look at sharpening, reviewing our ordinances that allow for managed growth, which is the famous tagline whenever we talk about development in this town. So I appreciate your turning on that appraisal. Dying to hear what they have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Grady, you had something?
It actually kind of dovetails on Councilmember Rhodes' comment about the CPI. I'm just kind of curious about once the appraisal's been received, how long are those figures typically good for?
I believe the state land department said 180 days. They're valid
About
for.
6 months then?
Yeah.
Okay, because I like the idea about the CPI if somehow we can lock that in plus the CPI. So that's, I think, very important.
Yeah, just truth in advertising. My first meeting with Grady was I took him out to take a look at Rogers Wash, Apache Wash in that area. And as we, walked around the area, we showed here's where the open space is going to be. Here's where it's, planned for DR 43. Here's where it's planned for this. On the way back, we stopped kind of at the top of a little rise. Last time I was out there, I had a golf rangefinder and it's 8 miles down to the chip plant. It's a straight shot down that valley through New River. There is no way in heck that at some point in the near future, when they get to phase 2 and phase 3 of the, I believe, $5 billion they just, Taiwan Semiconductor just received from the federal government, there's no way that place is not going to get built out. So we have a unique opportunity. We can buy it before it gets on the market. If we have to compete with developers, we will never be able to afford that land. So my personal thinking is we need to get this education sooner rather than later. And it's even more imperative now that the federal government has just dumped a whole bunch of money into the state of Arizona for semiconductors.
Luke, the contract is structured as a right of first refusal. Is that correct?
They are not looking to auction the open space for a 20-year period. The only party that can cause it to come to auction is the town of Cave Creek.
So if we could come up with the money, we can do a straight purchase. We don't have to wait for someone else to, because right of first
No, sir.
refusal is after someone else is.
No, sir. They're still bound by state law. They must put it up for auction. And we have the opportunity to purchase that based on fair market value, appraised value.
And so if we could induce them to put it up for auction, then is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Yeah. Have you had any information that indicates they were willing to do that?
The rapport with the state with senior staff at the State Land Department, present day, today, is a very good rapport. They are open to anything that we would like to entertain. That includes extending the agreements. That includes the application for a recreational special land use permit, almost got it right that time. And up to petitioning them to auction. One, an aside of the SLUP would be the ability to give us an initial 2-year term with a potential to extend those out on 5 years, where we could identify certain lands that are priorities for us to purchase now, or, purchase sooner than later, instead of coming and writing a check for the entire open space zone property. So those are really anything and everything is on the table with them to entertain, with us being a good partner with the town.
Oh, well, that's good news. Okay, well, I guess then the key thing right now is to get that appraisal back and see what we're dealing with.
Correct. It's really getting a benchmark idea of kind of what we would be looking at to move forward with the purchase and acquisition outright.
So I do want to qualify one thing, when we get the appraisal, it for all intents and purposes is for right of first refusal, because they would auction the open space. And the open space would go for whatever appraised value we have, unless some developer wants to come in and buy a chunk of open space.
Which we have zoned as open space.
Correct. So we have, for all intents and purposes, the right of first refusal now. I will also tell you, talking with Senator Kavanaugh, Representative Collin, the State Land Trust is the most political organization in the state. And every time you get a new governor, their priorities change. And it changes dramatically from governor to governor. So even if you get the same governor a second time, their priorities can be different. So you have an opportunity now that you might not have 2 or 3 years from now.
Town council. So what is your take on it? If we, once we get the purchase and we approach them and have the auction, and what protection does our zoning have, and any other comments you want to offer?
You currently are protected under the current agreement in that there's no one can come in and rezone because it's zoned open space. And they've agreed that no one can apply. They've agreed that you have a safe harbor for until 2029, and there can be no applications. When you read the end of that section, your protection is 4 of you standing up and protecting your community. They've acknowledged both in writing and in discussions with Luke that your zoning is paramount. Now, I know you have some in the audience have concerns about somehow the state preempting local zoning. Well, we saw that in the last legislature. We saw where they tried, and Mayor, I heard you remark to the constituents the danger of the legislation that would have in effect preempted zoning, and it didn't occur. So I truly believe the only way they could try to do that would be to pass a uniform ordinance applicable to all jurisdictions that open space is not enforceable. And I don't think that would survive. But right now you don't have to worry about that, because right now nobody can apply. And so, but your question becomes, the question becomes, once the 20 years is up, they're in effect saying, this says that they can assign to an owner, to a developer, and the developer would come in and put pressure on you to rezone. But right now you have the power not to rezone. And that is your absolute protection. Now, one way to guard against the concerns about the legislature stepping in would be to own it, because then nobody could apply. But that is a significant cost. Bottom line is you have time. Bottom line is it's currently open space. Bottom line is they're currently maintaining it. And you have to decide, do you wish to in effect prevent the property from in effect allowing it to be to no longer to be bought by somebody else who could put pressure on you to rezone? And the question is, will your successors fall to that pressure? You can prevent that by owning it. But I believe it's a remote chance. I believe, based on what happened in the last legislature and the way everybody reacted, you did, Mayor, when they passed legislation preventing you from zoning, for the state to preempt open space zoning would have to be statewide, and there's no way that could happen. Having said that, right now, this document says you're protected till 2029. No one can apply because this says they can't. If you wish to have an auction, you may, and perhaps it would be like a right of first refusal. But the question is, does the developer want to step in? And when you read the last sentence, it says, rezone, the owner may sell such portions in compliance with all laws, and you have the discretion allowed by law to reconsider rezoning. What they're saying is, beyond 2029, if you don't buy the property, they can assign it to a purchaser. That purchaser come right before you and try to rezone, and you're gonna have to, you or your successors have to say no. You're protected for another 5 years. You have to decide what you want to do between now and then.
And if I may, the state has also stated numerous times that there is no water allocation associated with any of its state trust lands within the town of Cave Creek. That goes for the residential component, the commercial components, and the open space. So
have to treat them like you treat all.
bringing their
Yeah,
own
you would have to
water.
treat them like all property owners concerning water, and they have to bring their own water.
Yeah, I had heard that the CAP is no longer accepting the 100-year water certificates for the Phoenix area. So how would they get the water?
That's one that protects you. What Luke is saying is you have some degree of protection. Your absolute protection to prevent your successors from rezoning the property is to prevent the continuation of a ban on application, which is in existence now, by buying the property. That will be costly.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
if I just could ask a question. I want to ask a question, but I'm not looking for an answer right now. Would the council be interested, and the town manager be interested in the town attorney having a resource during this process running parallel with development that would enable the temporary acquisition of an attorney, specialist, or a lobbyist to begin full-time partnering with the town attorney if he or his designee would have that interest. So we don't have to play catch up later on down the line. I think there's a lot of legalities here, literally, statutorily, but also politically. And I'm just wondering, without, on top of your other duties for the town, you've pulled a lot of rabbits out of the hats in this town over the years. Would we want your involvement proactively as legal counsel if you had an additional resource to delegate this to? We used Grady Gamage years ago. And I just think with your proprietary protection of this community, which I think is more personal than statutory, what about, and I'm not looking for an answer, but just about maybe the feasibility of the manager delegating to you to delegate to a specialist to have an ear on the ground, or have someone out there who understands the Byzantine priesthood that is the state land department and all things that are done that build square stucco and square steel.
Thank you for Mr. Mayor.
So-
Councilman Rogan. I worked, in fact, I'm the town attorney in Jerome. And we were the first jurisdiction to have the Goldwater Institute nail us for short-term rentals. And I gave them advice and they didn't like it. So they hired Grady, who gave them the same advice. And I think the concern I think you should have are the political machinations. And could there be, because remember I just said, they tried to rezone. They tried to preempt zoning, and the reason it failed is the governor vetoed it. So your point is, well, what if there's a different governor? What I'm telling you is, for them to try to pass the legislation you're worried about is extremely remote, because you can't pass a special law that applies only to Cave Creek. But I wouldn't mind talking to Grady. I think what you're concerned about is, do we have to worry that in 2009, if you don't buy, what they're saying is, can anybody limit your discretion as elected official in exercising the legislative capacity to rezone, which is your absolute most broad power? I don't think they could, but I wouldn't mind getting Grady to come in and confirm that, to say, what I'm telling you is, you're okay now till 2009. There's a risk after 2009 if you don't extend, if someone were to try to come in and force you to rezone. What I think Grady will tell you is, you have the power to say no. The question is, will they elect? Will 4 of you possibly say yes? And that's why you have elections. But I wouldn't mind talking to Grady to confirm my view that the risk of preemption at the legislative level, I think that's what you're asking me, is remote. I think it is remote, but it'd be something we would escalate.
Well, I think he's referring to Grady Gamage, not
Oh, I'm sorry.
Grady Miller.
Grady Gant, you were talking Grady
Oh,
Gant.
no, I was trying to go through the chair and through the manager to get to you.
Okay, because I heard you also talk about Grady Gamage as well.
There's too many Grady's in this world.
So he's looking at me, I'm like, are you talking Gamage or Miller?
Well, actually, I was, but you unintentionally must have listened to my brain or something. We had hired Grady Gamage years ago when it came time for, but I mean, no, I'm not trying to, I really was trying to go through the chair and go through the manager to see if the attorney would like to have a pathfinder. Because,
Call Grady and see.
well, and I'm not suggesting a specific attorney.
I mean, Grady Gant.
Okay, because we had used Grady in the past on the local project, but I just think rather than leaving adjusted development, we need to have a presence to know who's meeting with the state land department. Things are happening faster outside this room and this evening.
Your
So-
point is, touching on what Councilmember Rhodes is, could it be the state land, they don't have the amicable relationship they have to do now, and they see the value of the property, and they want to figure out a way to be liberated from the open space zone. I'm, as your town attorney, and I advise 72 towns on
Right.
land use. I believe it's entirely remote based on what we just saw in the last legislature. But you're right, I can't give you 100%. The governor changes and state land changes, they could try to preempt. I think that would be, we'd have a winning lawsuit, but you hate it when a lawyer says winning lawsuit, because that means you have to pay. And so if you're telling me, why don't you check with Grady to see if he can confirm my assessment that the risk of state preemption, the risk of machinations with a changed governor and state land department could overturn I'm your town attorney telling you, this document gives 4 of you the power to say no. And I don't think there's any way around that, but I'd be happy to check with Grady to see if that's right. Grady Gamage.
With every billion they add to that campus out there with more chip, and not only have we been changed on the targeting sites by Mr. Putin, I'm sure there's 4 or 5 more now going to hit that site if necessary, but I just think that if you measure our desire for preservation versus the need to employ, which they plan to do and house 17,000 employees, there's probably a lot happening faster than we're able to assess the
The
scene.
17,000 are direct employees. Are saying it's over 100,000 indirect
Yeah.
employees and secondary employees. And, my only comment is, someone once said that life and liberty are always in danger when Congress is in session. Same applies for our state legislature.
Luke and our council, I have a question on process. And what I'm concerned about is how fast we can move. And so I'm going to set up presumptions. I think that presuming that we borrowed the money for it, special purpose bond, for example. What would that look like as far, and you may not be able to answer that now, but how would we move? What is the sequence that we would move and the time it would take to move, especially coming up against the 2029 deadline? Does it make sense, for example, to try to get that extended? And would some initial discussions with state lands be in order so that they're patient, because that's not something you can do just with a drop of a hat. You have to wait for an election for one thing.
Yeah, Mayor, members of council, I can't really speak to that sounds like what you're talking about is an authorization granted by the voters appearing on a ballot.
Yeah, we
So
have
I really can't speak to that, but
Bill,
what I can
I think he's
speak
talking
to-
about Spur Cross replicated.
Yeah,
Your
yeah.
Spur Cross,
Like Spur
I was the
Cross.
deputy county attorney at the time. This was a classic example of governments working together, and your voters, I mean, who would have thought that they voted to increase the property taxes to meet this needs? And what I'm hearing tonight is there may be support for that. I think we should go back. I don't know how long it took. You're talking about replicating the process leading to Spur Cross is what you're saying.
Well, we're gonna have to come up with some options. I mean, I don't know what this thing's gonna come up with, but I'd rather do a little bit of thinking ahead of time, presuming it's outside of our resources. That's gonna be a big number.
Well, yeah, I think, so once again, I think the appraisals are the most important. As far as the state land department's timeframe, they really don't have one to speak of. They're not in a hurry when we originally started these conversations, it's been 12 months ago, really, that we really sat down with the former town manager and with Sean and different senior staff in the room with their senior staff and legal counsel. They really haven't given much thought to the commercial land that we did the density transfer with, the residential land. They're looking far south of the town boundaries. They're looking at cashing in those chips of entitlement, if you will, for different projects and different water allocations for much higher and much more density lands elsewhere outside of the town. So we're really not, you know, their resources are already invested in those other projects and those other state lands of theirs. So really anything we do would be on our time, our clock, however fast we can move through their process.
Well, it's just amazing that they're being that cooperative. I'm pleased with that. It's a real advantage.
I try to be nice and hospitable to
We-
peers and other organizations.
We have an amazing history in dealing with them.
We
And
do.
the
We-
land trust and the county and the state.
The
It's,
annexations and the rezonings themselves were really unprecedented. And, you know, you two could speak to that.
Yeah,
Sure.
miracles can happen more than once.
I just suggest that you, one of your criteria for selecting an appraiser is speed. Get that moving so that, because we're really stuck with, you know, without a plan until we know what that number looks like and what it would take.
Absolutely.
So we've had some good discussions on this, and I'm glad this has stimulated some additional thoughts and approaches. What I would like to do is, there's been some really good talk. One was seeing if we can engage some outside assistance. So we're going to explore that. The other thing that I also heard was, you know, timing and how critical timing is on this. And so I think one of the things we need to do, I was just kind of whispering to the attorney about, you know, the elections and when those are to be held for this type of question. You know, a lot of the referendums are governed by state law. So that's something we need to kind of figure out. Is it an even year only, or can it be an odd year? Those are all questions. So I think when we come back with an award of appraisal, which I think should be pretty soon in the near future, I think we'll also have to address all the things that you've talked about tonight.
There are going to be some windows there.
Right.
And 29 is, well, it's quite a ways away, but.
Right. And the other question is, you know, I think it's a no-brainer to just go ahead and see if we can get the extension.
Sounds like it.
I don't think there's any harm in it. And I would not have that hold us up doing anything we're doing or talking about tonight. It's just that I think that to me is a natural thing, just to see, was it 5 years was?
Yeah.
Do you remember the increment?
Yeah, they would entertain any level of extending that
So
out.
I would shoot for 5 years. Not saying that we're going to hold this off or postpone doing anything. Just to me, that makes a lot of sense.
And what that buys you is an additional 5 years on top of 2009. which
29.
they're-
29.
I'm sorry, 29, sorry, I keep saying 2009. They're then responsible for maintaining it and liability. And there can be no auction, there can be no petition to auction or petition to rezone for till whatever 5 plus 29 is 34. So what you do is you get the continuation of open space at no cost. You get the continuation of a prohibition on people applying for rezoning. And that gives you time to work through the mechanics of the funding. But I think, Teresa, we should try, if we can try to find, I was a county attorney, we could find the timeline for Spur Cross. That's what I'm hearing, is that if you wish to buy it, I think you need to go down the voter
Well,
approval.
I'm not saying we need to do that. I'm just saying we
I'm
need
just,
to
give you.
have all of our
you-
options.
You asked Luke
Yeah.
what the time was.
Yeah.
That'll give us an idea how long it took.
I just don't want to miss a window.
Yeah,
If there's a window out there that we don't know about.
If obtaining the open space is the end goal, you put all the oars in the water, and that's, you know, examining the SLUP, extending the agreements, and getting the appraisal, seeing what that price is going to be. You put all the oars in the water and you row to that direction and multiple paths. Get you there.
The reason why I suggest the extension, I have seen where these things backfire. And so you may take it to the voters and they turn it down for whatever reason. That's giving you more time to come back at a later date so that we're not, and I'm not saying that's going to happen here, but I'm just saying the breathing room it gives you is really very helpful.
Well, yeah, okay.
Mayor, if I may, hey, Luke, don't run off. I've been sitting here waving my finger, trying to get recognized for the last 20 minutes, and I'm
Sorry.
historically, we've been here, I was here when we rezoned all this, and we did the annexation, we rezoned all of this. My recollection is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we had someone local who had deep ties with the state land department who came up with a number that the state land department just completely rejected out of hand and said, no way, no matter what we had done for increasing the value of, by rezoning the stuff along Carefree Highway. I remember we got shot down completely. So the fact that we come up with an appraisal number could end up being completely and totally meaningless for this deal that we're thinking about doing. If it's not something that, because let's forget that not forget that the reason for the state land department in this land is to maximize revenue for schools. That is their prime reason. They wouldn't even let, during a period of blizzards up in northern Arizona, they would not even let the Navajo go and cut dead trees off for firewood to warm their hogans during a winter many years ago. So don't think that this is going to be the easy way out. And we also spent a year with the gentleman that we put on contract to try and find some creative ways around this so we could do that. And part of that was, as I recall, down, what's the area down there? You know, and doing transfers when the state land sold that, and they would buy some of this at the same time in order package deals so they could get denser whatever. And that was even shot down. So I just don't want anybody to think that we have not tried and made concerted efforts to get here. I'm all for finding out what we think the things are worth, but I think we would need to look at it piecemeal, because I don't think you can, with the number that's going to be the state land department is going to be happy with, is going to be we'll be able to afford all those acres all at one time. Just, did I say anything that was wrong that to your recollection?
Mayor, Councilmember Bunch, no, you did not.
Okay, thank you. I just want to get that in front of everybody.
It was Steve Betts who you hired back then.
Do what?
It was Steve Betts that the town hired.
Steve
when you were
Betts, there you go. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm sure these.
I could not remember his name.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
And Jerry Zadek did the appraisal in 2008 that got the $400 an acre number that was pushed around and floated around too.
Yeah, yeah. Which would have been legitimate based on the concessions that we made as a community, increasing the value of the other lands that were involved along Carefree Highway, the 80 acres of commercial, general commercial.
240, it's 120 general
240, yeah,
commercial, 120 commercial buffer.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we did an awful lot, plus the 200-acre resort up in the hills. Yeah, all right. They just didn't care about any of that we did.
Okay, anybody else? We'll move on. Public comment?
I have no one.
Okay, no one. Okay. Have you put cards in? Oh, okay. Well, okay. Come on up. I'm sorry? Oh, you're right.
I think it's 2028. It's 5 years from 2000. It's 20 years from 2008. You keep saying 2029. Oh, no. No. What I'm trying to say is you keep saying 2029. I think it's 2028, which is 1 year less.
2009.
I got it.
If I may though, there's a misconception.
That one year is not going to make a lot of difference.
Correct. So the agreements say from the date of rezoning, the town council did the second reading of the rezonings. They became effective on June 18th, 2009. The agreements say 20 years from the date that they are effective, June 18th, 2029.
Okay. David?
David Phelps chiming in. Luke and I had a small conference the first night of the budget discussions for the residents. And fortunately, I was the only one here and I put preservation on 2 of the easels to try to get this on the priority list. So we're talking about this tonight and it's very rewarding. I think I came home higher than I've ever been high after speaking with Luke about the SLUP idea and about the progress. And basically the big difference between now and the last time we tried to get an appraisal is the attitude. It's the attitude of the state land department saying, yeah, if you guys want to bring us appraisal, here's the appraisal. Pick one of these appraisers. They're not likely to reject this appraisal. They gave us who to hire. The time before, I don't know that we used somebody on their list. We may have, we may not have, but I remember Stan Toll was involved with that and we had our insider help, but we also didn't have a number they could buy, they could sell, I guess is what I want to say. So the number is going to be closer to the number that it should be because we have the arm's length coming at it. I'm very excited for us. I think it's a golden opportunity to try to make something really, really, the opportunity is truly of our lifetimes to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll be back at the budget. Trying to get that money in there.
Well, please. Thank you.
I have to agree with Councilman Rhodes that time is of an essence. We have seen how the bulldozer is moving at a rapid pace. 8 miles is very close. So when you look at the expansion that is going on, how much more would it cost 3 years down the road? So I think time is of an essence. I agree with you that we should be very careful with management of time. But you have to also think about how quickly these things are moving. And they are moving rapidly.
Thank you. Okay, we've completed our agenda. Does anyone have any objections to adjourning?
Let's quit.
Meeting adjourned.